I've been reading Ezra and Nehemiah, and I think that we can get some guidance this morning by looking at a pivotal event in Jewish history, the exile, the loss of Jerusalem and the temple, and then the return. So that's where I'm going. I have purposefully not shared my ideas for today with clergy or vestry. They've been working on this question for months intensively and will continue. I wanted to give you my ideas out of Ezra and Nehemiah, bring a Bible lesson into it, sort of a double perspective. Is that right? 3D perspective. Here we go. We're told now by scholars that the story I grew up with was wrong. Well, I'm getting used to that in my old age. Scholars now say that the Israelites, the northern tribes, and the Judahites, the southerners, had completely different ancestors who arrived in Canaan at different times, were taken to Egypt at different times, made their exodus from Egypt, in fact, in different centuries, and conquered their portions of Canaan independently. Biblical writers merged the family trees and the narratives of both West Semitic peoples to create a common genealogy, a common mythology. That's not the story I grew up with, probably not you too. If you would like to know more about the scholarly consensus today, on the next screen, I have at the bottom, if you can read it, I have a recent book that is just excellent. Igor Lipovsky, Early Israelites, Two Peoples, One History. And again, if you can email me, I'll be happy to send you the full bibliographical data on that. I said a moment ago, these were West Semitic peoples. When we say today anti-Semite, we mean anti-Semitic, we mean anti-Jewish, right? But actually, the word is a linguistic pointer, not an ethnicity pointer. A Semite is or was simply anybody who spoke one of the Semitic languages. On the Semitic family tree, you have things like, of course, Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Phoenician, Akkadian, A-K-K-A-D. You're familiar with family trees. Old English, German, and Dutch are both part of what we call Low West German on the Germanic family tree. So they were speaking, these people who came into Canaan, languages that were related but not identical, which helps explain Jewish history. I have, if you can see the screen, a couple of key dates, and that's all. I tried to strip down the history lesson. And I'm starting with 1000 BCE. We used to say BC, with the great King David. King David was great, if for no other reason than he managed to unify all these disparate West Semitic peoples into one united tribal confederacy, which he bequeathed to his son Solomon, famous for his wisdom, but also for his stupidity. For instance, he levied huge taxes that led to revolt, that led to, once again, fragmentation, with Israel in the north and Judah in the south. I have three key words up on the screen, if you can see it in red bold. The Assyrian Empire, followed by the Babylonian Empire, followed by the Persian Empire. About 200 years after King David, the Assyrians came, a succession of Assyrian kings, launched invasions of the northern kingdom, and a few of those people managed to escape to the south, but most of them simply were expelled and assimilated out. They disappeared into the trash can of history. These are the famous lost tribes. And then the Babylonian Empire dispatched the Assyrians. History, right? And they not only reconquered the northern district, but they took Judah. And many, perhaps most of the Judahites were hauled off to Babylon, the famous Babylonian captivity. But in their turn, Babylonia was conquered by the rising Persian Empire. And in 538 BCE, the Persian king Cyrus issued an edict permitting the Jews to end their exile and return to Palestine. So that's our key date today, 538, about half a millennium after the great King David. And that date and about the 50 years that follow is what I'll be talking about. What can we learn from the Jewish experience? All right, I've got half a dozen lessons, and then we'll open it up for your ideas. Whoop. There we go. Lesson number 1 of half a dozen. Jesus, am I running with you? I'm old enough to remember 1965, when there was a man named Malcolm Boyd who published a bestseller called Jesus, Are You Running With Me? And I remember thinking at the time, wow, dude, you got that backwards.
It starts out with
Are you running? But someone called the chronicler, I don't know who probably he was, wrote our book of Ezra and Nehemiah, which we then broke into 2 books. And the chronicler emphasizes throughout Ezra and Nehemiah how assiduously the leaders sought to discern and follow the will of God. Nehemiah in particular, we're told over and over again, prayed constantly. It's easy for us to forget today that that should be our starting point. It's easy to forget because our culture emphasizes the horizontal, the immanent aspects of life, those things we can observe and measure without reference to God or mystery or transcendence. Jesus, am I running with you? Lesson number 2, thank you, Thomas Wolfe. You can't go home again, at least not the same home. Some Jews never did return. They settled down in Babylon or other foreign places. I can hardly wait to go back to all the familiar rhythms like ripping off face masks. But some Bartians over the past year and a half have learned to find substitutes: personal devotion, prayer, Bible reading, meditation, alone or with others, whether in small groups or online. Some have gone to other churches or other parishes. Some have found ways of addressing their spiritual needs completely apart from Christianity. William James, in the Varieties of Religious Experience, you may remember, defines religion as a feeling of being at home in the universe. It's hard for me to comprehend, but many people seem able to find that feeling without benefit of organized religion. So, returning to Bart, we're also confronting some very practical questions, like what are we going to do with this large property? How are we going to meet our budget with fewer people participating? So you can't go back to the same home. Lesson number 3, very simple. Expect difficulties. You're laughing. Ezra chapter 4 in particular tells us that there was lots of opposition from the local inhabitants. The people who had moved in when the Jews were moved out, of course. They opposed the rebuilding of the temple in particular. We're lucky. Our neighbors are not likely to interfere with our return. Some might be unhappy with the return of heavy traffic, but nobody's going to write a petition to King Artaxerxes complaining we have always been troublemakers, except for Nebuchadnezzar. But we certainly can expect some dissension, even from within. There will be some Bartians who say, here's our chance to overhaul wholesale. Others will not want to change a single thing we used to do. If we understand this in advance, we can take it all in stride. Lesson number 4, don't circle the wagons too tightly. One of the challenges that we should watch out for is a kind of knee-jerk fundamentalism. It's always a temptation for people when they are in times of stress. For instance, in Babylon, Jews became preoccupied with protecting their special identity, avoiding assimilation, where it happened to the northern tribes. They concentrated on Jewish exclusivity, on the strict observance of Mosaic law as they were coming to understand it. For example, to me, the most outrageous moment in the entire Bible, it's in Ezra chapter 10, and it's reiterated in Nehemiah chapter 13. Put away your foreign wives and their children. You Jews who in Babylon took Gentile wives, get rid of them, throw them out on the street, and their bastard children along with them, your own kids. That push for Jewish ethnic purity is just as repulsive as the white racism that we are so familiar with. St. Bart's is well known for a generally open-hearted and open-minded stance, a progressive stance. And my thought is, amen. Lesson number 5, give everyone buy-in. Nehemiah rebuilt the protective wall around Jerusalem, but it took him 12 years. I think we can take comfort from that. It shouldn't take a full dozen years for us to restore St. Bart's to a full life. One problem Nehemiah faced was attacks by enemies like Sanballat the Samaritan. So Nehemiah assigned his men, we're told, with tools in one hand and weapons in the other, to work on rebuilding the wall at places that were close to their homes. Clever, huh? He understood that they would really fight for their own wives, their own kids, their own families. If they had to, they would. And likewise, if we can help our kids understand that they have their own skin in our comeback game, they'll be more likely to jump in with us. We're at the time of thinking about pledges now. People are more likely to be generous if they know where their pledge money is going and if they believe it will be well spent. Lesson 6, leadership is key. The Jews were blessed to have strong, creative leaders like Nehemiah. Virginia Murray found a reference on the internet to Nehemiah as the project manager, right? The project manager. Well, we also should be praying to have good project managers, good leaders, but also good followers. We're going to need lots of enthusiastic Bartians stepping forward to help. And friends, I'm talking to you in this room and on Zoom, but I'm also looking in the mirror. You can think of other lessons besides these half dozen that I got from. I don't recommend that you go straight home and read Ezra and Nehemiah. It's a tough slog. I did it for you, see? And these are the half dozen lessons I pulled out of that book, or those 2 books now. But I want to end my introductory remarks by thanking Bobby for a recent email to the AFC in which she cited 2 books, Jürgen Moltmann's Theology of Hope and Walter Brueggemann's Hopeful Imagination, Prophetic Voices in Exile. It struck me that the key word in both titles is hope. Neva, so good to see you. I'm celebrating you again today. You sent an email to me, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, how exciting it is to have a chance to reassess. Remember that? Where are we? Where have we been? Where might we go? Might we actually figure out how to put new wine in old wine bottles? Who knows? It's up to us and God. All right. That's my introduction. If you can read the screen, here is the summary of the 6 lessons. Lesson 1, Jesus, am I running with you? Lesson 2, you can't go home again. Lesson 3, expect difficulties. Lesson 4, don't circle the wagons too tightly. Lesson 5, give everyone buy-in. And lesson 6, leadership is key. You people at home again, if you can't read my email address, just send your ideas, your questions to nedraroberts@gmail.com. And my boss lady, if she's a good mood, will forward them to me. And then I will forward them on up the chain. All right, it's your turn. You're welcome to expand upon or denounce my idea of half a dozen lessons from Ezra and Nehemiah. Or you're welcome to come up with additional ideas of your own. What should we be doing? What should we not doing? Yes, Ken.
Something that really strikes me when you were talking about the lost 10 tribes, and not directly from Ezra or Nehemiah, but I'm struck by the images throughout Scripture of God will gather everyone together at God's time. God will take care of the lost, etc. And Jesus' images of Israel is bigger, and the field is great. So it's an idea of going forward. Yes, we've experienced loss. I mean, some of that is the loss of death, and we'll see them in God's reign in eternity. Other losses of people who just go on to other paths, well, there's always the open invitation, and we welcome them. And at the same time, God can raise up new people from stone, so we have to be open to participating in that rough word for Episcopalians, evangelism, that the field is ripe out there for growth and opportunity, that we just need to be participants in it, in which we need to be participants.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, Jesus has a bunch of parables of the lost coin, the lost son. When I was growing up Baptist, of course, that was one of the main words in our theological lexicon. Lost and found was the other. Okay, another idea. What should we do? What should we not do? What struck you about what I was saying?
Along the lines of expect difficulties and don't circle the wagons too tightly, I think we have to know where we're at to know how we can go forward. So, yes, people have left St. Bart's, and maybe people have left the church totally. And unless we know who we're sort of, who's the buy-in, who is us, who is St. Bart's now, I'm not sure we can appropriately move forward.
For you at home, this is Sharon Campolucci, right?
Yes.
I'm in the middle of eye surgery, so I'm not really sure who everybody is. Getting ready for class today, I went to the most recent St. Bart's directory with pictures and the names and phone numbers.
2017, isn't it?
What year is it?
Isn't it 2017?
It's, at least 3 or 4 years old. Yes, we need to find out who we are. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. After every year's retreat, the Adult Formation Committee, I think every year, we do a survey. And we need to do something like that. I think you're right.
I think the church needs to, I don't have a clue how we go about it, but saying to people that we haven't seen in a long time, do you still consider yourself a part of the St. Bart's community? And even if you haven't been here a long time, you can still consider yourself a part of our community, and therefore we want to include you in updates and whatever. But I think we have to know who's here to know how to move forward.
I'm going to send that idea on the line for sure. Anybody want to develop on that? Develop that idea. I think you would. Okay. Something else.
I think the expect difficulties. We have to keep our expectations realistic. Because I was thinking when Ken said there are stones out there, and I was thinking, yeah, some of them don't get very far away from that. They continue to be half stone, and you're pushing and shoving, but it has to work in its own time. It has to. You have to be patient, and for some of us, that is a learning opportunity.
Again and again.
Again and again.
I like that you said that, because that's been the big, I've had to really take a deep breath and say, it's okay for everyone to be disagreeing, and not just about church, but about everything. There's been so much disagreement, but that's part of being human, and if it's too peaceful, I think something's wrong, right? I think someone's planned everything down. So even in our church, we should expect different views, be ready for it, instead of discouraged and say, ah, yeah. 'Cause, yeah, when I heard about the project manager, I was doing a little reading too, the story was neat. I just thought, oh, that poor Nehemiah, we all know being the manager of any project.
Birdie cast.
That poor guy.
Okay, Nedra.
This is a memory from when I was teaching a million years. At faculty meetings, when we were reassessing programs for practices, whatever, it was always good to ask two questions. Do we still have to do this? And if the answer was yes, we might ask, do we have to do it in the same way? And that brought up a lot of creativity that helped us figure out, yes, we do, and here's why it's important, or no, we don't. We could approach it this way and accomplish the same thing. So for some of the tasks that we'll have to undertake in moving back into our world of St. Bart's, maybe do we still have to do this? And if so, do we have to do it the same way? Could be questions that help us find what we're looking for.
That was Nedra for you people at home. Okay,
I think we have to continue to see ourselves as a community, because we are a community. You know, I think sometimes people say, oh, I don't like that particular person, and so I'm not going to blah, blah, blah. But we, you know, it's just like being I'm from a really big family. It's like being an extended family. Sometimes you want to murder your sister, but she's your sister. So.
we are the body of Christ, not the body of Nedra.
Yes, exactly, you know.
Okay,
There are things we will likely have to work through, just like Never said, expect difficulties.
Sharon, you're starting to answer your own question. Who are we? I like it. All right.
About the circle of wagons, I'm having trouble applying that to our current situation.
Did that saying go over everybody's heads? No, you understand what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
In times of stress, people always hunker down, you know? And I haven't seen that at St. Bart's much in my 12 years here. But I'm saying it's something we should know happens when people are under stress. And we're all there. We've been there for at least 2 years. If you look at politics, we've been there longer than that. So we need to be aware of that danger, I'm suggesting. And that's one of the things that in Ezra and Nehemiah really struck me. The Jews clearly, when they went to Babylon, with the northern tribes' dissolution in mind, went overboard in the other direction, tightened the buttons.
It's the thing you hear at work a lot, at least I used to hear at work a lot, because I worked for the government. But we've always done it this way. Really? That was before typewriters and before computers and before, you've always done it this way? You've made 4 copies of the NCR paper? No, we don't do that anymore. And we have to sort of, and that's very difficult for me, but I'll just admit that right now. You know, it's very hard for me when someone says, you know, we don't need to do it that way anymore. No, we've always done it that way. So.
All right. Yeah.
To Virginia's point, I'm sorry, she's walking out.
Jesse was set up to.
Yeah. To Virginia's point about circling the wagons, I think the key words in that phrase are too tightly. I mean, there's a sense in which it is good and healthy and necessary to circle the wagons in the sense of regathering the community. It's the healthy permeability of the circle that's important to maintain.
Absolutely, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we've been stuck in our living rooms and bedrooms for so long. We need that circle, we need that community like this.
I think when we think of leadership, we think of clergy.
Yes,
And this is the time to recognize that leadership comes in all shapes and forms. And you don't want too many chiefs and not enough Indians, but this is a time when we can say, okay, here is a need, come forth and pick this up and take it and make it move. Or here is a possibility, explore it with people and see where it lands. There's a lot of that needs to be done.